veterinary practitioner Ger Cusack from Cumra Veterinary Group down in Kilmacthomas, County Waterford joins us now.
Okay.
Ger, thanks for coming up to us.
Very welcome, Claire.
Ger, can we start off by discussing some of the indicators of lameness in dairy cows?
Well, it's not difficult to spot lame cows on most farm situations. They tend to be at the back of the group when the animals are at pasture, and they're not difficult to spot. Their yield will also be reduced, and they're readily identified.
And so what are some of the causes, Ger? What are the causes behind?
Okay, most of the lamenesses that we see are a result of problems in the hoof. Mostly the hind hoof, the back hoofs of cows, and the most common conditions that we see are bruising of the hoof and a condition called white line. And I happen to have a hoof here with me today, and I bring this with me regularly. And the hoof wall grows from the top here down like this, and the sole
Can you just
grows.
hold it up there in the
Sorry.
Ger?
Yeah, and the sole grows in straight lines out here. And where they meet is this junction around here, the edge called the white line. And that's a very vulnerable part in the sole. And we see lots of problems in the white line. So, and the problems on the white line are as a result of stones and grit getting through this cemented junction here. And when they get in so far, then your cow goes lame. That's the most common condition that we see.
Mm-hmm. And some of the causes of the problems with the hoof?
Okay, poor surfaces, poor roadways, rough yards, or situations where cows don't have an opportunity to pick where they place their feet, and they end up walking on stones or in rough areas, and they end up traumatizing the sole. You can have bruising on the sole or penetration of this white line.
And then what about genetics? Do genetics play a role as
well? Genetics do play a role, but in the main, the biggest single factor is management factors. And of the management factors, the biggest single factor is walking surfaces.
So, and we saw in the VT earlier, we had a farmer who built steps down on the yard to improve the surface for the cows. What kind of, based on your own experiences of being out on the ground, Ger, what infrastructure developments would you recommend on farms to prevent lameness?
I suppose in the Irish context, the vast majority of cows spend most of their time grazing. So the biggest single piece of infrastructure that a farmer needs to consider in relation to lameness is his roadways, and getting the surface of the roadways to as good a level as possible, having a camber on the roadway so the water doesn't stay on it, and some fine material on top of the roadway so that when the cow walks on the roadway, that if there are any loose pebbles or stones that are likely to damage her foot, that the stone or the pebble goes down into the surface of the roadway rather than damaging her foot. Like if she walks on a stone on concrete or on a very hard roadway, she's going to bruise her foot when she stands on that stone.
Ger, you mentioned about the cost implications. It is quite costly for the farmer when they have when lameness is a problem.
Yeah, UCD did some interesting research about 10 years ago, and their finding was that the cost of the average case of lameness was of the order of €300. And they broke that down into €50 treatment cost. That could be a hoof trimmer, it could be the vet, or it could be the farmer treating himself. €100 in terms of milk yield, €100 in terms of additional culling. Their finding was that 10% of cows that went lame got culled. So if it cost €1,000 to cull a cow, and if you had 10% of the cows that go lame getting culled, that was a cost of €100 per lameness case, and a further €50 in terms of losses around fertility. Cows that go lame, especially in the seasonal breeding herd, during the breeding season, they're less likely to go on calf. It takes longer to get them in calf. They're less likely to show heat, and they're less likely to conceive. So when they added all those costs together, they ended up with a total cost of €300 per lameness case, which is a significant cost.
What are some of the other preventative measures that farmers could adopt on farm? Foot bathing, mobility scoring, is that a big...
Okay, well, I think another preventative measure that could be very easily adopted on farms is to allow cows as much time as possible. Cows are careful animals. They're not risk takers. They're prey animals, so they're used to being careful. So if cows are allowed plenty of time to walk on the roadways when they're being brought in the evening, or when they're leaving the parlour after milking, and allowed plenty of time to pick their steps and to avoid the hazards. If you have situations where cows are being rushed with a quad bike or an aggressive dog, cows are pushed along with their heads up in the air. They're not checking the ground. A normal cow, she walks with her head down, checking the ground. She places her front foot in a safe place, and she places the back foot in exactly the same place. So where they have plenty of time to find a safe passage, they will avoid a lot of the pebbles and the stones, and they will thereby reduce the foot traumas. Like, a lot of these problems are down to foot traumas. So if we could reduce all the foot traumas, all the small traumas, we would end up with far less lameness.
Ger, thank you. We'll leave it there. Very useful insights, and thanks for coming into us.
Thanks very much, Claire. Thanks for the invitation.